I wanna love this anime, right? I wanna love this anime, you know how much I love the mana games, I love JRPGs. I always say, right, that the way I got into anime is through Japanese role-playing games, right? And this is not a video per se, but I was prepared that the way I grew up, right, when I went to college or whatever, in my age, right, in that kind of millennial, whatever I am, but they were in that age group, if you were into anime, you also had to play, you know, Final Fantasy, Suikoden, Breath of Fire, and of course, Seiken Densetsu, right? Of course, last talk about the opening was translated from Swedish to Japanese, which to me hurt a lot, and also how I have so much experience of playing Seiken 3, especially, right? How I imported this game and so on, all this stuff, right? So I really want to love this anime, right? Because I am from that age group where you discover Japanese storytelling, Japanese characters and so on, through these kind of games. This anime, though, is very, very gamey, right? So speak, and the game itself is very, very anime, right? So, some parts, I like this episode. Here, for example, right, the main character gets the next mana stone thing that opens up the world, right? You build up the world and so on. I like that episode 1 as well, how they're showing how the world is built by that, something. You always get like an item and so on. So in that way, maybe it's a commercial way, productional game dev standpoint, but I do like how the anime actually is pretty good at explaining kind of how the game works, right? Honestly, I think it's pretty good. The problem I have with the anime, though, is the pacing, right? I said that thing too, and to be honest with you guys, I keep saying I wanna love this anime, I love this game, Fantasy, right? Now, this is not my favorite, honestly, it's not my favorite game in the Seiken Densetsu, right? It's number 3, it's number 4, but still though, it's a very memorable game, especially game to me, right? But just like, the game is terrible, or sorry, the anime, I mean, is terribly paced. I don't understand how the anime can be terribly paced, because the game doesn't have much storyline, really. This is actually one of those games, because you build the world yourself. If anything, right, for example, I used recently played, I haven't played a bit in the game yet, but I started playing Atelier Sophie 2 to Switch recently, when I went back to my hometown, right, and on the plane and so on, to play that game. And in that game, it's like 2-3 hours of, like, you know, introduction. It's like, you get Isekai, that just playing the world and the game setting and the rules, and this is the goddess, and this is Isekai, and it's like 3-4 hours before you even start playing the game, you know. That's a JRPG. You're like, I've gotta read the manual for 3 hours, right? You know what I mean? But Legend of Mana, though, that is anime is based on, is one of the most straightforward games, because you don't have that, you know, massive because it's not a linear game, right? It's one of the few, I should say few, but especially this time, one of the lesser linear Japanese RPG games. So the video game is much more straightforward. You go to the city, right? You get the quest, send the girl, go to the dungeon, beat the boss, go back, next quest, beat the boss, right? The game is much more like that, right? Yet the anime, for some magical reason, managed to be like this. Which is like, oh, they're talking, and they're talking some more, and then they're talking some more again, and then they're talking more, and then they're talking again. And one thing this anime does well, though, is it throws in all this great, you know, soundtrack, right? From the series to games. It has great battle fight soundtrack. As I said last episode 1, the visuals looks amazing. This is my still frame standpoint. The fight did not look very good, though. But so that's actually probably what I had the most to play for a new support. The fight did actually look that good, right? I hope the fight was gonna be more beautiful. But all the still frames, right, really capture that mana vibe and so on. Certainly do. But end of today, though, I didn't understand what this anime is going for, and I really mean it, right? I keep saying it, but I want to love this anime. And honestly, I mentioned earlier, I find it funny, right, that you take one of the least, like, you know, story-packed segments of the game. You take one of the least ones, with the least storyline, with the least linear one, and you still manage to have so much dialogue. Yeah, it's just like, and it's like kind of fun, right? Because obviously, you know, I love JRPGs, I played every goddamn RPG, I collected every game, blah, 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 blah. And as I just mentioned, right, I don't problem sitting there for 3 hours, like reading through all the JRPG, you know, introduction, right, to this, whatever, new JRPG. But I'm just sitting here being like, it doesn't work very well as an anime, right? And it also is, you know what it reminds me of? If you've seen this anime, it reminds me of Promised Neverland, right? So Promised Neverland, and 2 then, had this big issue where it was show, not tell, or rather than, you know, tell, not show, right? So they had like 2 episodes in Promised Neverland where, I won't spoil it here, but basically the kids, right, they're talking to someone, right? They just explaining to them for like an episode. It's like a whole episode of a guy just expositioning what happened or something. And you're like, there's no animation. You're sitting there in a cave talking for like 30 minutes, more than like 2 episodes. You're like, holy shit. And after that, they still show part of it, right, in the 3rd episode. Yeah, so you're like, oh my god, they did 2 episodes of Tell, and then it's 5 minutes of show as well. You're like, oh my effing god, right? Because it's a manga, right? That can work. You read a manga, you get a lot of text, you get a dialogue, right? You read through that, right? And then you the next page or whatever. But as an anime, it feels really weird to basically look at a still frame like this, right? And don't trust me, this is better than Promised Neverland, okay? This is better than Promised Neverland. I'm not saying this episode disappoints me, right, to some extent, right? But it's not as bad as Promised Neverland. Not very few animes are as bad as Promised Neverland, trust me. But anyway, they both have the same issue, right? Where the character just stands and talks, and again, the issue isn't that necessarily, you know, except in a manga or in a video game, right? Where you get the dialogue, you read through the text and so on, and enjoy it. The problem here is that you're just looking at 2 people talking, right? Or like 5 people talking for like 10 minutes, and you're like, this should probably be animated, right? Or for example, in both these animes then, right? When someone's explaining, oh yes, you know, you heard about the dragon princess, right? You know, and if you take that, for example, to, let's say, a slime, right? So if you ever watch I'm calling it a slime, when they're mentioning there, right, Milen, right, the princess, the dragon princess kind of character, right? What does the anime do? Well, the anime, of course, is animating her, you know, flying in the space, right? Or maybe a fire version of her. You know what I mean? Like, they're animating a visualization, right, of this character. Or, you know, whatever. Oh, how about this thing? Or maybe it's a silhouette of the character, whatever, right? They're doing some kind of visual aid, right? But in this anime, to most part, as I've been also Promised Neverland, right? They're just standing there and talking. And it's just like, they're just talking. There's no visualization, there's no animation. So it feels so slow paced, it's positionally, and I'm just like, I don't mind it normally in a JRPG, but here it's like, it feels weird in anime. Maybe this anime has too much of a JRPG. It does, I would say it's probably a little bit of budget, right, and so on, right? But in a sense then, my conclusion for this anime, and this is honestly probably the last video made of this anime, unless if this video explodes, to be perfectly honest, right? This anime bores me, you know. Yeah, it bores me. I love this game so much. I played the game. Maybe it doesn't help that I actually know all the storyline. I've beaten the game a few times. Maybe it doesn't help, but sure, if the video gets like 1,000 views, you probably make another video. But if you get a few thousand, give it 10,000 views to make more. No, probably, yeah. Share if you want me to do more, right? You have to share the video, like, and comment, so on. Then we might do more, right? My conclusion for this review, though, is that this anime is too much of a JRPG, right? They basically have all the dialogue, and it doesn't work, and it reminds me, not only of course Promised Neverland, which is a terrible anime, but it reminds me of many, you know, light novel animes, right? That are not very good. There are many good light novel animes, you know, Mushoku Tensei, Konosuba, whatever, right? But they also have these really slow-paced light novels, right? Where they just go over the dialogue. Where they just like reading through the dialogue, right? The character stands there and it's like do. And I think a good example of that is that in a lot of light novels, because we don't actually see the character, you know what I mean? Because you're reading a book, right? You're not actually seeing the character with your eyes. You're only having a text there. Maybe you have some visuals, but still, you get a point. There's no actual, you know, image, right? Not for most pages. So in many light novels, of course, the author, like in a book, right, has to explain. Oh, the woman had, you know, flaming red hair, and she had big eyes, you know, she had big kahunas, and you know, yada yada, right? The author needs to explain the character, and I think a very good indication of, in my opinion, a badly adopted animes from the light novels is, of course, when those kind of dialogue, you know, stays inside the anime. Because then it just gets weird, you know? Like, you have a character, basically, talking to another character. Oh, do you see that woman over there? Man, she got red hair. It's like fire. And, you know, it gets kind of cringy when they have to, like, you know, read out, like, a page of description, right? Where we can see the character. But yeah, what do you guys think? Is this anime too much of JRPG? I think it's a combination of being like that a little bit, right? And also, of course, the budget and so on, they kind of slow pasting. But I guess, yeah, I want to love it, right? And so on. But I also feel it's a little bit almost too true to the source. They're like, oh, we're going to have all the dialogue, right? We're going to have all the dialogue, and the character's going to stand there. But at the same time, though, they could have had all that dialogue, right? The slow-paced dialogue, a bit, but also having visual aid, right? Like I said, please subscribe. Press the like button, give me thoughts below, right? And please check out my new video game, coming out of video game video tonight.